At my son's wedding, I was called the widow with the money. I always believed family celebrations should be joyful. Weddings, birthdays, holidays. Moments when love feels stronger than loss. David's wedding was supposed to be that day for me. A day where laughter would echo. Where I would see my son smile. Where I could sit proudly in the front row and whisper to myself, I did it. I raised him. He made it. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror in Queens. I chose the navy dress James once loved. I pinned a silver brooch he gave me for our 30th anniversary. For a moment, I felt him there beside me. James's voice in my head gentle and steady. You look beautiful, Jennifer. They'll see it too. The church was glowing. White lilies lined the aisle. Guests whispered with excitement. David stood at the altar, nervous but radiant. When his bride Linda walked in, I could almost hear James clapping from above. For a while, everything felt right. For a while, I believed love still bound us. It was only when we reached the reception hall in Manhattan that the air began to change. The ballroom shimmered with crystal lights. Waiters carried trays of champagne. Music played softly in the background. At the entrance, a long table displayed name tags for the guests. I walked forward with a small smile. The young woman at the table handed me mine. Here you are, Mrs. Edwards, she said. I looked down. I froze. It did not say mother of the groom. It did not say Jennifer Edwards. In elegant script, it said the widow with the money. My hand trembled. My smile faltered. The letters blurred as if they were carved into my skin. Is something wrong? The woman asked kindly. I forced a smile. No, nothing at all. I pinned it to my dress, feeling as though I just nailed a scarlet letter to my chest. Inside the hall, laughter surrounded me, but every chuckle felt sharper. Every glance at my chest felt heavier. I tried to convince myself. It must be a mistake. Someone's idea of a joke. Surely David would never allow this. Surely Linda would not humiliate me like this. But then I heard it. Two voices behind me whispering. Did you see her tag? One snickered. Linda said it would be hilarious, the other replied. They call her their personal ATM. My knees nearly buckled. I clutched the edge of a table to steady myself. In that moment, champagne glasses clinked in the distance, but in my ears, it sounded like chains. Across the room, David waved. Mom, come meet the Andersons. Dad used to golf with him. His smile wide, his voice loud, completely unaware of the knife lodged in my chest. I walked toward him, each step heavier than the last. Guests looked at me, some with pity, some with discomfort. When David introduced me, he laughed. This is my mom. Our walking checkbook. My heart cracked. The room spun. I extended my hand to the guests anyway, forcing my lips into a line that resembled a smile. But inside, I felt hollow. Inside, a storm began to brew. Stay with me until the end of this story. And comment the city you are watching from. Because what happened after this moment changed everything I thought I knew about my family. The music swelled. Couples twirled on the dance floor. Glasses clinked. Laughter rose like a tide. But around me, the air felt heavy. My name tag burned against my chest. Each letter etched deeper, as if the words were written on my skin. I stood near the dessert table, pretending to admire the cake, the buttercream roses, the silver fondant swirls. But all I could taste was bitterness. Behind me, two bridesmaids whispered. I wasn't meant to hear them, but their words pierced sharper than glass. Linda told me she designed that name tag herself. David laughed when she showed him. Said it was perfect. My breath caught. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the tablecloth to steady myself. Perfect. That was the word. To them, mocking me was perfect. I forced myself to turn away. The lights blurred. My heels clicked against the marble floor. I told myself not to cry. Not here. Not in front of strangers. A waiter passed by with champagne. I took a glass. Not because I wanted it, but because I needed something to hold. Something to keep my hands from trembling. I found a quiet corner near the tall windows. Outside, Manhattan glittered. Taxis honked. The city moved on oblivious. Inside, my world was cracking. I thought of James, how proud he had been of David, how he worked extra shifts to save for David's education, how he smiled when David graduated. James would never have allowed this. He would have defended me. But James was gone, and I was alone. A familiar voice broke through my thoughts. Jennifer, there you are. It was Linda. Her gown sparkled under the chandeliers, her smile flawless. But her eyes, cold. We were just talking about you, she said. Everyone knows this wedding wouldn't have been possible without you. Her hand grazed my arm, light as silk, sharp as a blade. I tried to smile. Yes, well, I'm happy for David. Linda leaned closer, her perfume sweet but suffocating. Oh, don't be modest. David and I couldn't have dreamed of this ballroom without your generosity. Her eyes flickered down at my name tag, and she smirked. I froze. The smirk told me everything. She wasn't ashamed. She was proud. Linda straightened. Well, enjoy yourself, Jennifer. After all, this is your show, isn't it? And with a swirl of satin. She glided back to the dance floor. I stood there, glass trembling in my hand. Her words echoed. Your show. As if I were nothing more than the financier. As if my role was only to pay. Across the room, David laughed loudly. He had his arm around Linda. She whispered something in his ear. He grinned wider. And then, he raised his glass in my direction. Here's to my mom. The reason we're all here tonight. Applause erupted. Eyes turned toward me. Every clap felt like a slap. The spotlight seared my skin. I lifted my glass, forcing a nod, pretending gratitude. But my heart pounded. The words, widow with the money, roared louder than the music. I set the glass down, my throat dry. I needed air. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the polite smiles, the murmurs that followed. In the restroom mirror, I barely recognized myself. My silver hair perfectly pinned, my dress elegant, but my eyes hollow. How had I become this woman invisible in love, but visible in wealth? Cherished not as a mother, but as a wallet. The restroom door creaked open. An older man stepped in by mistake, then quickly backed out. A voice called softly from outside. Jennifer, it was Martin Reynolds, James's old attorney. Kind eyes, gray at the temples. Sorry to intrude, he said gently. I think we need to talk. My pulse quickened. Why here? Why now? Martin glanced at my name tag. His jaw tightened. I see they've shown their true colors, he murmured. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He reached into his jacket pocket. I wasn't going to give you this. James asked me to wait. But tonight, it seems necessary. He held out a sealed envelope. My hands shook as I took it. The paper crackled like thunder in my fingers. What is this? Martin's gaze was steady. Your husband left an addition to his will, a clause that changes everything. The ballroom music swelled again. The laughter grew louder. But in that quiet corner, the world seemed to stop. I looked down at the envelope, my heart racing. A single thought echoed in my mind. Maybe tonight. I wasn't the one being laughed at. Maybe tonight. They were sealing their own fate. The restroom was silent. Only the faint thump of music seeped through the door. I stared at the envelope in my hands. The paper felt heavier than it should. My fingers trembled. Part of me wanted to rip it open. Another part feared what I might find inside. Martin's eyes softened. "Jennifer," he said quietly, "James wanted you to have this when the time was right." When the time was right, the phrase echoed in my head. Was this the time now, surrounded by champagne and laughter, with my heart breaking in silence? I broke the seal. The paper tore with a sound like thunder. Inside were two folded documents. One bore James's handwriting. The other, the neat type of a legal addendum. My eyes blurred with tears, but I forced myself to read. "Jennifer," the letter began, "if you are reading this, I am gone. And if Martin has given you this tonight, it means the people we trusted most have shown you who they truly are." My breath caught. James had known. Somehow he had known. I pressed a hand against my chest. My heart raced. The words swam, but I kept reading. "I built our life for you and David. But I fear greed may poison what we leave behind. So I added one condition to my will. Any heir who publicly disrespects you, any heir who mocks you, humiliates you, or treats you as less than who you are, will lose their claim." Immediately, the room spun. My knees weakened. I clutched the sink for balance. James had foreseen this. He had protected me from beyond the grave. Martin placed a hand on my shoulder. "Jennifer, the clause is ironclad. If David or Linda humiliated you tonight, you hold all the power now. All the power." The phrase felt unreal. Just an hour ago, I had been nothing more than a walking checkbook. Now I held a weapon stronger than money. The truth and James's final word. But a wave of sorrow swept over me. I didn't want weapons. I didn't want battles. I wanted family. I wanted love. I wanted my son to look at me with warmth again. Yet out there he had laughed at Linda's cruel joke. He had raised a glass and called me the reason for a celebration, not with pride, but with mockery. I wiped my eyes, folded the papers back into the envelope. My reflection stared back at me in the mirror. Silver hair pinned neat. Dress immaculate. But my eyes, they no longer looked hollow. They looked sharp. "Thank you, Martin," I whispered. He nodded. "Do you want me to stay?" I shook my head. "No. This is something I must face alone." With the envelope clutched in my hand, I pushed open the restroom door. The music roared louder. The ballroom lights blinded me for a moment. Linda was laughing with her bridesmaids, her jeweled hand resting on David's arm. David, my son, the boy I once rocked to sleep now, a man who laughed at my expense. The DJ announced the first dance. Guests clapped, gathering around. Linda and David stepped onto the floor. The spotlight followed them, casting the rest of us in shadow. I stood at the edge, watching them move gracefully, their smiles wide, their love dazzling. But in my chest, a storm was brewing. James's voice echoed in my mind. "Any heir who mocks you, humiliates you, will lose their claim." I looked at David, at Linda, and for the first time all evening, I didn't feel powerless. I felt something else. resolve. The music swelled. The guests cheered. But I knew the truth. This dance was not just a dance. It was the beginning of a reckoning. I slipped the envelope into my purse. Its weight was reassuring, like James was walking beside me again, protecting me, guiding me. I lifted my chin, straightened my shoulders, and whispered to myself, they think I'm just the widow with the money. They're about to learn I'm the widow with the will. The ballroom sparkled. Crystal chandeliers rained light over the floor. David and Linda glided across the dance floor, their bodies pressed close, their smiles radiant. Guests clapped to the rhythm. Phones flashed. Laughter bubbled like champagne. I stood at the edge, watching, not as a mother, but as an outsider. The envelope weighed heavy in my purse. Each step I took, I felt James walking beside me. His voice steady, his warning clear. Any heir who mocks you loses everything. The music ended. Applause thundered. David kissed Linda's hand, then glanced toward me. Mom, he called, his voice carrying across the hall. Don't just stand there. Come dance with us. Eyes turned. Guests smiled expectantly. It was meant to be sweet. But I heard the undertone, the same mocking edge that had poisoned his toast. I forced a smile. No, thank you, David. My dancing days are behind me. He laughed. Then at least enjoy the show. You've certainly paid enough for it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some guests chuckled nervously. Others looked away. Linda leaned into his ear, whispering. He grinned wider. I clenched my fists inside my purse. The paper of James's will crinkled under my fingers. The truth pulsed like a heartbeat. If only they knew. A waiter approached with champagne. Would you like one, Mrs. Edwards? His eyes flickered to my name tag. He hesitated as if even he felt the cruelty of the words. I shook my head. No, thank you. The night stretched on. Couples danced. Children darted between tables. The band played old classics. But everywhere I turned, I caught fragments of whispers. Did you hear what David called her? Linda must have planned that tag. Poor woman. To be mocked at her own son's wedding. I wanted to scream. To tell them all the truth. To read James's words aloud. To strip away David and Linda's glittering masks. But I stayed silent. Not yet. Not here. Because timing, James always said, was everything. I moved toward the back of the hall, near the bar where shadows softened the edges of the lights. I could breathe there. I could think. Martin appeared beside me. You read it, didn't you? He asked softly. I nodded. Yes, yes. And now I don't know whether to cry or to fight. You don't have to decide tonight, he said. But remember, Jennifer, they chose to humiliate you. James chose to protect you. I looked toward the dance floor. David spun Linda with pride. Her gown shimmered. Her laughter rang like glass. I whispered to Martin, they've already crossed the line, haven't they? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I already knew. The band shifted into a slower song. David left the floor to greet more guests. Linda floated toward her bridesmaids, her eyes catching mine. She smirked, deliberately, like a queen surveying her conquest. I straightened. My chin lifted. For the first time that night, I met her gaze without flinching. Her smile faltered, just for a moment. And in that moment, I realized something important. She thought she had won. She thought I was broken. But she hadn't read James's words. She didn't know what I held in my purse. The music faded again. The DJ's voice boomed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's raise a glass to the bride and groom. Waiters rushed with champagne. Glasses filled. David stood tall arm around Linda's waist. Tonight, he said, is about love, but also about gratitude. Gratitude to my mother. He turned toward me, eyes gleaming. Without her, none of this would have been possible. She gave us everything. Money, time, support. And for that, she deserves to be remembered exactly as she is the widow with the money. The words dropped like stones. The room went still. A few laughed nervously. Others stared at me, waiting for my reaction. I felt my pulse roar in my ears. The envelope seared my palm inside my purse. James's voice thundered again. Any heir who mocks you loses everything. I raised my glass. Slowly, deliberately. To David and Linda, I said, my voice calm, but my hand steady now. May you always get exactly what you deserve. I drank, set the glass down, and walked away, leaving silence in my wake. The storm had not broken yet, but it was coming. And when it did, no chandelier, no champagne, no laughter would save them from the truth. Stay with me until the end, because the storm that started tonight would rewrite the legacy of this family forever. Comment the city you are watching from, and keep watching. The real betrayal has only just begun. The ballroom noise swirled behind me. Laughter, music, clinking glasses. But to me, it sounded distant, like echoes from another world. I walked through the crowd, each step deliberate, each breath heavy. The envelope pressed against my side, a constant reminder of James's voice. Any heir who mocks you loses everything. I slipped out onto the terrace. Cold night air hit my face. The city stretched before me, skyscrapers glowing, taxis rushing below, life moving on unaware of the storm inside me. For a long moment, I gripped the railing, the metal cold under my fingers. I thought of Robert. No, James. I still stumbled on his name in my thoughts. Even now, he felt so near. He had always been the planner, the one who thought 2 steps ahead. I realized then, even in death, he was guiding me. Even now, he was telling me, Jennifer, open your eyes. Do not let them take what is yours. Behind me, the doors creaked. Martin stepped onto the terrace. His coat draped over his arm. You should not be alone right now, he said. I shook my head. I am not alone, Martin. James is with me. His expression softened. Yes. Seth, through this will, through his words, he is standing right beside you. I turned back to the city. Do you know what hurts the most, Martin? Waited? That I wanted tonight to be about family. I wanted to celebrate David. But instead, I see only greed. Martin sighed. I warned James of that risk. He saw it too. That is why he added the clause. I looked at him. Tell me, Martin, if I enforce it, what happens? His voice was steady. David forfeits his claim. Linda gains nothing through him. It all remains with you, Jennifer. Until you decide otherwise. Until I decide otherwise. The words struck deep. For the first time in years, I realized the power was mine, not theirs. Not David's. Not Linda's. Mine. The music inside swelled again. The DJ called for everyone to gather. I straightened my shoulders. Not tonight, I whispered. But soon. Martin nodded. I will be ready when you are. I returned inside. The ballroom felt smaller now. Faces blurred together. Laughter felt hollow. David was at the center, shaking hands, beaming with pride. Linda draped on his arm, whispering, smirking. Her eyes found me again. She raised her glass mockingly. I raised mine back. But inside my resolve hardened like steel. I began to watch more carefully. The way Linda whispered into David's ear. The way he nodded without question. The way guests looked at me with pity. The way some looked at Linda with suspicion. Details. I needed details. If I was to fight, I needed proof. I needed witnesses. I needed allies. So I smiled. I forced myself into conversations. I let them think I was calm. I asked questions, collected fragments of truth. Who designed the invitations? Oh, Linda handled all of that. Who chose the ballroom? David said. Linda insisted. She wanted nothing less. Who paid the deposits? Oh, your mother did. Everyone knows that. Each answer cut deeper. Each answer added to the picture. I was not the honored mother of the groom. I was the sponsor, the financier, the widow with the money. But if they thought that was all I was, they were wrong. The night dragged on. The cake was cut. The bouquet tossed. The last dance played. Guests began to leave, smiling, thanking, oblivious to the storm rising in my chest. David hugged me at the end. His arms brief, his voice distracted. Thank you, Mom. For everything. You really made this possible. Linda leaned close, her perfume sharp, her whisper colder than ice. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Jennifer. You earned your title tonight. Her eyes flicked to my name tag. Then she walked away. I stood frozen. My hand touched the paper hidden in my purse. James's letter. His will. His warning. No more denial. No more silence. They had crossed the line. And now it was time for me to cross mine. I walked out of the ballroom. The city night wrapped around me. Taxi lights streaked past. Sirens wailed in the distance. And with every step, my resolve grew stronger. I whispered into the cold air. You wanted to see the widow with the money. Now you will see the widow with the will. The morning after the wedding, I woke to silence, the kind of silence that pressed heavy on the chest. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I once poured cereal for David, the same table where James read the morning paper. Now empty. Now mine alone. In front of me lay the name tag, the widow with the money. Its elegant script mocked me. I traced the letters with my finger. Each stroke cut deeper than a blade. I whispered aloud, James, you were right. They do not see me. They only see what I can give. I reached for the envelope. The paper crinkled under my hand. I unfolded James's letter again, reading his words slowly, carefully. Any heir who mocks you loses their claim. Tears welled, but this time they did not fall. This time I felt something stronger. Determination. I dialed Martin's number. His voice came calm, steady. Jennifer, I was expecting your call. I cannot stay silent anymore, I said. They crossed the line. I agree, Martin replied. Then we begin. We met later that afternoon. His office smelled of leather and old books, the walls lined with files and certificates. Behind his desk, sunlight streamed in, casting sharp lines across his face. He slid a folder across to me. These are the documents James left. Bank accounts, property deeds, insurance policies. Everything tied to his will. I opened the folder. Paper after paper. Numbers, signatures, dates. All proof of the life James built. All the things David and Linda assumed were theirs. Martin leaned forward. If you choose to enforce the clause, they inherit nothing. But we will need to document what happened. Names, dates, witnesses. The humiliation must be undeniable. I nodded. Images from the wedding flashed in my mind. The name tag, the whispers, David's toast, Linda's smirk. There were dozens of witnesses, I said. Some laughed. Some looked away. But they saw. Good, Martin replied. Then start writing. Every detail you remember. We will gather statements if necessary. I pulled a notebook from my bag. My hands shook as I wrote. But each word steadied me. Each memory laid bare. Each cruelty immortalized on paper. Hours passed. When I finally set the pen down, my notebook was full. Martin scanned a few pages, nodding. This is strong, Jennifer. This is the foundation. I left his office with the folder in my bag. The city roared outside, but inside me, a strange calm settled, like I had finally chosen my path. At home, I opened the closet. Inside, boxes of old family albums. Photos of David as a child. Photos of James holding him proudly. Smiles frozen in time. I lingered on one picture. David, at 10 years old, gap-toothed grin, arms around my neck. I remembered the warmth of that hug. The purity of that love. How had it soured into this? Was it gradual, or had I been blind all along? I closed the album, placed it gently back. This fight was not about memories. It was about truth, about respect, about reclaiming what was mine. The phone rang. I answered. David's voice came cheerful. Mom, just calling to thank you again. Linda and I had the best night of our lives. My grip tightened on the phone. You are welcome, I said flatly. He chuckled. You should be proud. Everyone knows you made it possible. Even Linda says we could not have done it without you. The words struck like poison. Even Linda says, as if her approval mattered. As if my worth depended on her acknowledgement, I forced my voice calm. Yes, David. I am glad you are happy. He paused. By the way, Linda mentioned something. She was thinking maybe we could use some of your space. For storage, you know. Our apartment is small. Storage. My space. Already they were circling. Already they wanted more. Let me think about it, I replied coldly. He laughed lightly. Sure, Mom. I knew you would understand. When the call ended, I sat in silence. The line between love and betrayal had never felt so sharp. I opened James's letter one more time. His words glowed under the lamp. Do not let them take what is yours. I whispered back. I will not, James. Not any. 3 days passed after the wedding. 3 days of silence from David and Linda. 3 days of me reading James's words again and again. Any heir who mocks you loses everything. By the 4th day, I decided I would not wait for them to come. I would go to them. I called ahead. David answered, his tone cheerful. Mom, what a surprise. Come by any time. Linda would love to see you. I knew that was a lie. But I agreed. Tonight then. Their apartment was in Midtown. A sleek, high-rise glass walls, modern furniture, the kind of place that shouted money. Money they believed was theirs. Linda opened the door. Her smile wide polished. Jennifer, so good of you to visit. Her perfume filled the hallway. Sweet, suffocating. I stepped inside. David came from the kitchen, a glass of wine in his hand. Mom, sit down. We were just talking about you. I raised an eyebrow. Were you now? Linda gestured to the couch. Please make yourself comfortable. We owe you so much gratitude. Her words dripped honey. Her eyes cut knives. I stayed standing. Let's skip the pretense. We need to talk. David's smile faltered. Talk about what? The wedding, I said. The name tag. The toast. The way you laughed while I was humiliated. The room fell silent. The hum of the refrigerator grew loud. Linda tilted her head. Oh, Jennifer. It was just a joke. You are too sensitive. My pulse quickened. A joke you printed a label that called me a widow with the money. You let the entire ballroom laugh at me. And David, you raised a glass to it. David set his wine down. Mom, please. It was light-hearted. No one meant harm. I stepped closer. No one but me felt the harm is that no one but me carried the shame. Linda crossed her arms. You are overreacting. Everyone knows you paid for the wedding. Why not acknowledge it with humor? I met her gaze steady. Because humor ends where cruelty begins. David rubbed his temples. Mom, this is not worth fighting over. It was one night. One night, I repeated. One night that showed me who you truly are. His eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I took a breath. I am saying James saw this coming. He left me protection. A clause in his will. Any heir who humiliates me loses their claim. The color drained from David's face. Linda stiffened. Her voice sharp. You are bluffing. I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope, held it steady in my hand. Read it for yourself. David hesitated. Linda snatched the paper, unfolding it quickly. Her eyes scanned the words. Her lips parted in disbelief. This cannot be real, she whispered. This is manipulation. No lawyer would sign off on this. It is real, I said firmly. Martin witnessed it. James signed it. And now your actions have consequences. David's hands trembled. Mom, you would not enforce this. You would not cut your own son off. I looked at him, at the boy I once held, at the man he had become. And my heart ached. But my resolve did not waver. You cut yourself off the moment you laughed at me. Silence. Only the ticking of a clock filled the room. Linda slammed the paper onto the table. You cannot do this, Jennifer. Think about your legacy. Think about appearances. I leaned closer. My legacy is not for you to decide. It is mine. And appearances mean nothing without respect. David's voice cracked. Mom, please. I need this. Linda and I, we built our future around it. Anger rose in my chest. You built your future on money that was never yours. On a woman you thought too weak to stand up. You were wrong. Linda's mask slipped, her voice cold as steel. Then what do you want Jennifer Revenge to see us cross? I shook my head. No. I want honesty. I want dignity. I want to be seen as more than a wallet. David's eyes filled with something: shame, fear, regret. I could not tell. But Linda's eyes burned with fury. She snatched the paper again. Fine. Play your little game. But remember this, Jennifer. If you take this path, you are not just cutting David off. You are cutting yourself off too. I stood tall. My husband trusted me with this choice. I will not betray him. And I will not betray myself. I turned to leave. David's voice followed me. Mom, wait. We can fix this. We can talk. I paused at the door, then spoke without turning. The time for talk was at the wedding. Now the time is for truth. And I walked out. The city air hit me again. Cold, sharp, freeing. For the first time in years, I felt strong. Not because of money, but because of resolve. The night after I left David's apartment, I did not sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The words replayed in my mind. You cut yourself off the moment you laughed at me. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. This fight would not stay behind closed doors. It had to come into the light. I brewed coffee. The bitter smell filled the kitchen. I spread the papers across the table. James's letter. The legal clause. My notebook filled with details. The folder Martin gave me. I traced each line with my finger. Every detail was a weapon. Every memory from the wedding was ammunition. My phone buzzed. A message from Martin. Ready when you are. I typed back. Today. We met at a diner near his office. The kind with cracked leather booths. Coffee refilled every 5 minutes. The waitress called everyone honorable. I slid into the booth. Martin already had a stack of papers. He handed me a folder. These are witness statements. A few guests from the wedding have already reached out. I opened the folder. One note read I saw Linda hand Jennifer the name tag. Another I heard David call her their walking checkbook. Each statement burned. Not just because they remembered, but because they had stayed silent that night. Martin's voice was steady. People are braver after the fact. We can use this. I nodded. What is our next move? He leaned forward. Documentation. If we bring this to probate court, the judge will need more than emotion. We need proof of public humiliation. Proof they mocked you openly. Proof you were reduced in front of witnesses. I pulled out my notebook. I have it all written down. Every detail. Every word. Every look. Martin smiled faintly. Good. Now we prepare. But Jennifer, understand this. Once you take this public, there is no going back. I met his eyes. I already went back once. At the wedding. I swallowed my pride. Not again. He slid another paper across. This is a preliminary petition. If you sign it, we can file within the week. I picked up the pen. For a moment, my hand hovered. This was not just about inheritance. It was about dignity, about legacy, about James's voice echoing in my heart. I signed. The ink soaked into the page. Permanent. Martin gathered the papers. It begins now. That evening, I walked through Central Park. The trees swayed gently. Children played by the fountain. Joggers passed by. The world looked the same. But inside me, everything had changed. I sat on a bench watching the city breathe. I thought of David as a boy, running in this very park, his small hand gripping mine, his laugh ringing clear. And I asked myself, how did we get here? How did love turn into greed? I pulled my coat tighter. The wind cut sharp. And I whispered into the air, this is not the end. This is the beginning. The next day, I attended Sunday service at church. The stained glass glowed in morning light. Voices rose in hymns. Peace filled the air. Afterward, a friend approached. Jennifer, we missed you at the community dinner. We heard about the wedding. Are you all right? I hesitated. Then I spoke. They humiliated me, but I will not stay quiet. Her hand squeezed mine. You should not. We all saw it. We were shocked, but we did not know what to say. Her words tightened my chest. They had seen, they had known, and they had stayed silent. But silence was over now. That evening, David called again, his voice strained. Mom, Linda says you are blowing this out of proportion. Let's just move on. I stayed quiet for a moment, then replied, You may want to move on, but the law will not. The will not. And I will not. Mom, please, he begged. Do not do this. You already did, I said. And I hung up. The line was drawn. The storm was building. And soon the entire family would feel its weight. The following Sunday, the family gathered at my sister's house in Westchester, just 30 miles north of the city, a tradition we had kept for years. The table was set with roast chicken, mashed potatoes, bowls of green beans, the smell of apple pie cooling on the counter, the sound of cousins laughing in the yard. On the surface, it was warmth. Underneath it was tension. David and Linda arrived late. Linda swept in first dressed in designer clothes, a diamond bracelet glittering on her wrist. David followed carrying a bottle of wine. They kissed cheeks, exchanged pleasantries, but their eyes darted toward me, searching, wary. I sat at the far end of the table, the envelope tucked neatly into my purse. James's letter, the clause, the truth waiting to be heard. Dinner began. Plates clattered, voices overlapped. But beneath the chatter, I felt the weight of silence. Halfway through the meal, David cleared his throat. Mom, he said, so glad you could come. We were just telling Aunt Susan how grateful we are for your support. His tone was light. Too light. Forced. Linda chimed in. Yes, Jennifer. We could not have had that wedding without you. It was truly your gift to us. Her words dripped with sweetness, but her smirk betrayed her. The table grew quiet. Eyes turned toward me, waiting for my response. I set down my fork, my hands steady now. I stood slowly. The chair scraped against the floor. If gratitude is what you want, I said, then let us speak honestly tonight. A hush fell over the room. Even the children outside seemed to quiet. I pulled the envelope from my purse, placed it on the table. This, I said, was James's final gift. Not to you, to me. David frowned. Mom, please. Not here. Linda's smile tightened, her eyes sharp. Jennifer, what are you doing? I unfolded the paper. The familiar handwriting stared back at me. I read aloud. Any heir who publicly disrespects my wife, any heir who mocks her, any heir who humiliates her in front of others, shall forfeit their claim to my estate. Gasps filled the room. Forks dropped onto plates. Eyes widened. Murmurs rippled around the table. I looked directly at David. Do you remember your toast? Do you remember what you called me? His face flushed red. Mom, it was a joke. I turned to Linda. And you? Do you remember the name tag you designed the widow with the money? Do you deny it? She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence spoke louder than words. I lifted James's letter. This is not my voice. This is his. This is the man you both loved. The man who raised you, David. The man who trusted me to protect his legacy. The room was silent. Only the sound of the clock ticking on the wall. My sister whispered, My God, Jennifer. A cousin muttered, I saw it at the wedding. I thought it was cruel. An uncle shook his head. I heard the toast. I thought it crossed the line. Voices rose. Agreement. Disbelief. The weight of witnesses gathering. David slammed his fist on the table. This is madness. You cannot strip me of everything because of a joke. I met his eyes. No, David. You stripped yourself the moment you laughed at me. Linda's voice cut sharp. You cannot do this, Jennifer. It is not fair. I turned to her. Fair, you humiliated me in front of 100 guests. You reduced me to a wallet. James wrote fairness into his will. And now it is justice. Tears burned in my eyes, but my voice did not shake. I will not be erased. Not by you. Not by anyone. The table sat frozen. Some with pity. Some with awe. All with silence. I folded the papers, slid them back into the envelope, and placed it firmly into my purse. This is the last time I will explain myself, I said. The next time we speak of this, it will be in court. With that, I left the table. The sound of whispers chased me to the door. But I walked tall. For the first time in years, I walked free. The morning after the family dinner, my phone rang before sunrise. The caller ID showed David. I let it ring twice, then answered. Mom, his voice rushed. What were you thinking last night you embarrassed us in front of everyone? I stayed calm. I told the truth. You chose your actions. I chose mine. He groaned. Linda barely slept. She says you humiliated her. She says you made her look like a villain. I pressed the phone tighter. Linda made herself look that way. By her choices. By her words. David snapped. You cannot just rewrite everything, Mom. You cannot tear down my marriage because of a piece of paper. I inhaled deeply. This is not just a piece of paper. It is your father's voice, and I will honor it. He went silent. Then softer. Please, Mom. Think about appearances. Think about how this looks to the family. Do you really want to drag us to court? Yes, I said firmly. If that is what it takes. The line went dead. He had hung up. By afternoon, Linda called. Her tone sharp, rehearsed. Jennifer, let me explain something. You are making a mistake. A big one. I remained quiet. She continued. You think the family is on your side? But people forget. People move on. They will not want to take sides in court. Then we will let the judge decide, I replied. Her voice tightened. You are bluffing. You would not cut off your only son. You love him too much. I closed my eyes. Love still lived in me, but betrayal lived louder. Love does not excuse cruelty, I said. James gave me the power to protect myself. I will use it. She hissed into the phone. You will regret this. The line clicked. Silence again. That evening, I met Martin at his office. He had already heard. They are scrambling, he said. David called me too. He begged me to talk you down. I raised my chin. What did you tell him? That my loyalty lies with James's will. And with you. Relief washed over me. For the first time, I felt truly backed. We spread papers across his desk. Witness statements. Bank records. James's handwritten clause. Martin tapped the table. They will fight. Expect them to paint you as unstable, emotional, greedy. I laughed bitterly. Greedy, they drained me for years. Every dollar, every mile I drove, every sacrifice. And still it was not enough. He nodded. Exactly. So we document everything. Every expense you covered. Every payment you made. I opened my notebook. The numbers filled page after page. Checks for tuition. Down payments for David's car. Hospital bills when he broke his leg at 16. Thousands of dollars across decades. Martin scanned the list. This is not just support. This is proof of a lifetime of giving, I whispered. And still, they called me a checkbook. The next day, David showed up at my house. His car screeched into the driveway. He slammed the door behind him. "Mom, please," he said, his eyes red, his voice hoarse. "Do not do this. I will lose everything." I looked at him from the porch. "You lost me the night of your wedding." He stepped closer. I was stupid. It was a mistake. Linda pushed me. She said it was funny. I just went along. Tears welled in his eyes. "Please forgive me. Do not punish me for one mistake." For a moment, my heart cracked. For a moment, I saw the boy he once was. But then I remembered the laughter, the whispers, the smirk on Linda's face. "One mistake does not last an entire night," I said. "One mistake is not a toast. One mistake is not a name tag. One mistake is not silence while I was mocked." He stepped back. His face hardened. "If you go through with this, you will lose me forever." I stood tall. "Then I have already lost you." He turned, storming down the driveway. His car roared away. I watched the taillights disappear into the night. And I whispered into the cold air. I lost a son that night, but I found myself downtown Manhattan. The courthouse stood tall, gray, unshaken. I walked up the stone steps, each step heavier than the last, each step a promise. Martin walked beside me, briefcase in hand, calm, composed. "This is the day, Jennifer," he said. "Speak the truth. The truth will carry you." Inside, the air was cold. Benches lined with faces. Family. Neighbors. Strangers curious for trauma. At the front sat the judge. Black robe. Sharp eyes. No patience for games. David sat at one table. Linda beside him. Their lawyer whispering in their ears. David's jaw clenched. Linda's gaze icy, defiant. I sat across the aisle. Martin beside me. Papers stacked neatly. James's letter on top. The bailiff called the case. In the matter of the estate of James Edwards. The judge nodded. "Proceed." David's lawyer stood first. A tall man with polished shoes. "Your Honor, this case is nothing more than emotion. My client and his wife celebrated a wedding. Any remarks made were jokes, taken out of context. They cannot justify disinheriting a son." He gestured toward me. "This is a grieving widow. We respect her pain. But this is not justice. This is revenge." Murmurs filled the room. I kept my eyes steady. I would not break. The judge turned. "Mr. Reynolds, your response." Martin rose. "Your Honor, this is not about grief. This is about respect." James Edwards foresaw this possibility, and he wrote a clause into his will. A clause that states clearly any heir who mocks or humiliates his wife forfeits their inheritance. He lifted the letter. This is James's handwriting. Signed and witnessed. Undeniable. The judge leaned forward. "Show me." Martin handed it up. The judge studied the words. Brows furrowed. Then nodded. "Continue." Martin turned toward the courtroom. On the night of the wedding, Jennifer Edwards was handed a name tag, not labeled mother of the groom. Not Jennifer Edwards, but widow with the money. Gasps echoed through the benches. The words cut again, even spoken aloud. Martin pointed to the witness stand. "I call Susan Miller." My sister walked forward, hand on the Bible. Sworn in. She sat, voice trembling but firm. I saw the tag. I saw Linda hand it to Jennifer. And I heard the laughter that followed. David shifted uncomfortably. Linda's lawyer scribbled notes. Martin continued. I called Daniel Wright. A cousin stepped up. I was there for the toast. David raised his glass. He called his mother their walking checkbook. People laughed, but Jennifer looked broken. The words hung heavy in the air. I felt them land on me again. But this time, they landed on David too. The judge's eyes narrowed. Mr. Edwards, is this true? David stammered. It was a joke. A bad one. I did not mean harm. The judge's gaze was sharp. Did you laugh as others laughed at her? David hesitated. Yes. Yes. Linda leaned in. Your Honor, this is blown out of proportion. Everyone jokes about money. Jennifer is overreacting. Martin's voice cut firm. No, Mrs. Edwards. This is not overreaction. This is humiliation. This is public disrespect, exactly as James warned against. He turned back to the judge. Your Honor, we ask that the will be enforced. That David Edwards forfeit his claim. The courtroom buzzed. Tension electric. The judge raised a hand. Silence. He looked at me. Mrs. Edwards, do you wish to speak? I stood slowly. My knees trembled, but my voice was steady. Yes, Your Honor. For years I gave everything. Dollars for tuition. Miles driven to practices. Nights without sleep. Days without rest. I poured my life into my family. And in return, I was reduced to a wallet. A joke. An ATM with a heartbeat. My throat tightened. But I pressed on. My husband knew my worth. He knew what it meant to be respected. And he gave me this power. Not to destroy my son, but to remind him, respect is not optional. It is earned. It is owed. I turned toward David. Tears filled my eyes. But you forgot David. You forgot who raised you. You forgot love when you chose greed. The courtroom was silent. Only the ticking clock on the wall. The judge leaned back. He tapped his pen against the desk, then spoke. The evidence is clear. The clause is valid. The witnesses are credible. The humiliation was public. Therefore, this court rules. David Edwards forfeits his inheritance. The estate remains with Jennifer Edwards. Gasps erupted, some in shock, some in relief. David buried his face in his hands. Linda's lips pressed tight, her eyes burning with rage. Martin touched my shoulder gently. It is done, he whispered. The judge struck his gavel. Case closed. And just like that, the storm ended. Not with laughter, but with truth. The courthouse steps were cold beneath my feet, but my chest felt lighter than it had in years. Martin walked beside me. Jennifer, he said softly, you honored James today, and you honored yourself. I nodded. Tears stung my eyes. But these were not tears of defeat. They were tears of release. For weeks I carried the weight of shame. For years I carried the burden of giving. Today I carried only my name. Jennifer Edwards. Not the widow with the money. Not a checkbook. Not a joke. Simply Jennifer. I drove back to Queens. The miles rolled under my tires. The city skyline faded in the rearview mirror. By the time I reached my house, the sun had begun to set. Orange light poured across the porch. The air smelled of autumn leaves. I stepped inside. Silence wrapped around me. But this silence was different. Not heavy, not suffocating, peaceful. On the kitchen table, the name tag still lay, its black script burned into memory. I picked it up, held it in my hand one last time, then dropped it into the trash. Gone. I poured a glass of water, sat by the window, looked at the photo of James on the mantel, his kind eyes watching me still. "I did it, James," I whispered. "I kept your word. I kept mine." That night, I slept deeply. No nightmares, no weight on my chest. Days turned into weeks. Neighbors stopped me on the sidewalk. "Jennifer, we heard what happened. You were brave." At church, people nodded respectfully. You taught them a lesson. Even strangers at the grocery store whispered, "That's her, the widow who stood up for herself." But inside, I did not feel like a warrior. I felt like a woman who had finally chosen herself. David did not call. Linda did not write. Their silence was its own answer. And though my heart still ached, I knew I could not go back. One afternoon, I walked through Central Park, the same park where David once ran as a boy. Children laughed near the fountain. Parents pushed strollers. Life moved forward. I sat on a bench. The autumn wind brushed my hair. I closed my eyes. For the first time, I felt free. Free from being measured in dollars. Free from being weighed against expectations. Free to be Jennifer. I thought of James again. Of the man who saw me, not as a wallet, but as his wife, his partner, his equal. And I smiled, because even in death, he had given me back my voice. I whispered into the breeze, "Thank you, James, for loving me enough to protect me, for trusting me enough to finish this fight." The leaves rustled as if in reply. I stood, walked the path back toward home, not as a widow, not as a victim, but as a woman reborn. So now I ask you, if the people closest to you betrayed your trust, would you fight for your dignity even if it meant losing them forever? Tell me in the comments below. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything.